In the spring, river driving begins on the West Branch. Logs coming down the stream have collected on the boulders on the shore and are forming a wing, which, if not removed, will build across the stream and form a jam. Mr. Ed Connors, who is the boss, is one of the most efficient lumbermen in Maine. He can build a dam or build a camp. He's a good civil engineer, can lay out a practical logging road, and drive the logs. The water and the logs are making so much noise, conversation is difficult. So Mr. Connors is motioning to some of the men to come down to work on another place. I have taken this view to show how agile the river drivers are. The men have pick poles, and you see them running over the logs, shaking them so to keep them floating down with the current. We will now show you the shoes worn by the men on the drive, made by Bass of Wilton, Maine. The caulks enable the men to stay on the logs when they're slippery and make them able to do efficient work. The cook has helloed luncheon, and in a moment you will notice two men crossing on two logs. The fellow in the rear is Brown from East Machias, now a bellhop at the Falmouth Hotel, Portland. He said, "Mr. Ames, I came pretty near falling in, but he landed on shore all right." This scene is the men having their lunch. They have 4 lunches a day. A breakfast, 4 o'clock, first lunch, 9 o'clock, second lunch, 2 in the afternoon, and supper when they get in at night. First luncheon, they have canned beef, boiled ham, hard-boiled eggs, biscuit, donuts, cookies, and tea. Second lunch, they have tea, cookies, donuts, biscuit, and ham. This is Roll Dam Ledge. In the summertime, one can walk across this ledge with shoes. When the water is turned on to make a driving head, it spreads out on this ledge so the logs roll over. This is a beautiful sight and most interesting to see these logs rolling, tumbling, pounding all day long. The day after I took this view, a body of logs came down in the night and formed a wing on the opposite shore and had to be dynamited off. The next scene is taken a mile below, where young Morrison of Whitneyville and another fellow are tending this station to see that the logs don't form a jam. In 1879, when I first went up the Machias River, this section was heavily timbered with pine from 12 inches up on the stump. We now come to Tunnel Pitch. This is a small island, middle stream. About 18 years ago, a jam formed up over here, and Bert Tibbetts of Cherryfield was out there helping pick the jam. When the logs started, he fell in. He went down under the logs, and the crew all turned away from the sight, thinking that he was lost. There happened to be an opening in the logs about 12 feet across where the water boiled up through. Someone looked up and discovered Bert just as the water threw him up on the logs. He had one on Jonah. He came out all right. This is Main River Camp, and the cooks serve their lunches cafeteria style. Note the two cooks. One is Al Smith, not of New York, but of Columbia Falls, and by his side is Billy Henscomb of Machias. Here's Gib Berry of Jacksonville. Mr. Connors is now leading the crew up on the jam. The man in the back part of the screen with a light shirt on is chopping the key log. If they're not able to start it by cutting the right log, they may have to use dynamite. This time the logs commence to move. The men are going to the shore where the logs pinch up, trying to keep the logs moving. The logs are 6 to 8 feet deep, in fact, down to the bottom of the river. You will note the spruce 20 feet long going end over end. The men on these logs have to be careful, because if their foot slips down between some logs, they're liable to have a foot or a leg pinched off. You will notice the logs gathering momentum all the time. The main body of logs is held by a boom just about a mile above, waiting to get this jam started. And when the river is clear, they will turn the other logs off. The next scene is Main River Bridge. One view is up the river, the logs coming down to the bridge, and the view of the rapids. Later, the bateaus will be run over these riftlings. Now you will see the men working on this wing. A point is forming out into the stream, held there by boulders, and the logs will have to be cleaned off. When it is all flattened down, Mr. Connors will take the men onto the shore, where they will clean out the cove. The green men, which we sometimes call auger handles, will work on the shore, while experts like the man with the vest on, Mr. Everett Scott of Bering, work on the outside next to the stream. Mr. Connors is on the shore watching. If anything should happen, the men would be in danger. He would hoot at them and have them come ashore. Now we will show you the men clearing a center jam at the head of the falls. These logs all have to be picked off, and it is about a day's work for 20 men. We have 2 boats on the rear to follow along and pick up the stray logs and men that may be marooned on a center like this. About 20 years ago, I saw Joe Haycock stand on this ledge nearly half an hour while they dropped the bateau down to him, having one line on each shore, first paying out one line and then another until the boat swung around and he could get aboard. A man is on the logs about 30 feet from shore. You will see the bateau drop down to pick him up. Unfortunately, my camera ran down at the critical time and I didn't catch him as he jumped aboard. The bateau in the cove is putting some men ashore to go to work down below. This is a view of the falls and the bateau coming down over the rapids, and it's some joyride. In 1920, I came over this falls in a bateau, and when we struck a boiler, the water flew over the heads of the men in the bow, and I got about a barrel of water right in the face. Here comes another bateau down over Lower Falls. 3 or 4 bateaus are here until after the last log is taken off the falls. Then they will close the boom behind the logs in the pool, and it is dead water from here into Whitneyville. Patrick Sullivan was camera shy, but thinking I had the camera, he came out on the sluice with me, and I had another man take this shot. This shows Philip Clement of Prentice and Carlisle, Alfred Ames, Vaughn Moore, and Patrick Sullivan. The dog coming out to greet me has chased me many miles through the woods. We will now show you the fire and wangan and river driving outfit. The fire is between 2 logs where we boil tea and bake biscuit in a tin kitchen before the open fire. The cookee is getting wood for the bean hole. The bean hole is 3 feet across and filled up with kindling wood with birch or maple wood thrown on the fire. The beans are put in the ground at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the process is reversed. I staged this picture because I could not take a view at 4 o'clock in the morning. Al Smith is giving Clint Clark a plate of beans. Bill Vane is frying doughnuts. I've seen half a barrel of doughnuts eaten by the crew in one meal.